Now, I thought this one was quite interesting because the Strathfield Council in Sydney's Inner West is declaring war on real estate signs following a surge in complaints about visual pollution. I didn't know that that was a thing. On nature strips and roundabouts, the Mayor said, quote, "It's one thing to put a sign outside a house, but it's another thing to put signs every 5 metres on a stretch of road." I mean, for goodness sake, Stephen, the council is now considering banning the signs on public land. Is this fair or not?
Look, this is ridiculous, and I've had a bit to do with Strathfield Council over the years. I mean, it shouldn't exist. It's only got something like 18 to 20,000 residents. It doesn't justify having its own council, and they didn't want to merge because apparently the name on your bins matters in Strathfield as to who's going to pick your rubbish up. I mean, this bloke needs to focus on the important stuff like roads, rates and rubbish and not worry about this concept of visual pollution. I mean, the number of real estate agents in Strathfield, they'd be up in arms. They'd launch a counter-protest of some, or even a coup of the council, I think, if they tried to do this. But if people are trying to sell their house, they're trying to sell their house. It's not going to last forever, particularly in the current market.
No, exactly. And you're right. I'm so sick to death of these councils just butting into everyday issues. You're right. Go back to the simple basics, roads, rates and rubbish. I mean, there's a problem across the country at the moment. It is so infuriating. Now, look, Susie, I want to ask you about your column in the Herald Sun on how student teachers are running VCE classes due to staffing shortages. This is extraordinary. How did it get to this?
Well, the inmates are running the asylum, particularly in schools. You've got people who are just a few years older than the kids they're teaching. So the teaching crisis is so bad in Victorian schools. They've had to bring in 1,700 graduates. They haven't even finished their teaching degrees, and they are teaching every level in Victorian schools, including VCE. So 1,700, that's 500 more than last year. Well, they're not even graduates, they're teaching students. And you'd have to wonder, 1 in 3 teachers at the moment who are registered to teach do not want to be in classrooms. And so these youngsters are being sent in to fill the gaps, and it's just appalling. And the state of schools at the moment, the level of violence, the level of bullying, the workload pressures, why would you be a teacher?
Yeah, but also, I mean, the standards across the board, it's reflecting in classrooms. We know that the standards of maths and English is down across the country. And, here's more proof as to why. There's so many different factors to it. Now, look, the Victorian opposition has vowed it will scrap Jacinta Allen's planned state voice to Parliament if it wins the next election. Stephen, hallelujah. 60% of us said no to this division, yet the Victorian government couldn't help itself, could they? They just wanted to continue on with a voice to Parliament.
What they need to do is pick up the phone to the ACT government. We've had effectively a voice to Parliament for years, since ATSIC was abolished under the Howard government, and we have the worst outcomes for Indigenous Australians of any jurisdiction in the country. So for a start, let's do it from a practical perspective. It's not actually going to do anything for Indigenous Australians and the people it's supposed to help. But again, it comes back to democracy. I mean, the entire nation, apart from the ACT, voted against this thing, and the Victorian government thinks it's a good idea to bring it in. Well, good on the opposition for doing the right thing here.
Yeah, good on Brad Batten. He's certainly been doing well, so fingers crossed that lasts. But Susie, who gave Jacinta Allen a mandate to go ahead with this?
Well, she certainly didn't have a mandate for this, and it's very interesting that the opposition have come out so strongly against it, and we're going to see more and more of them picking these kind of issues where they can draw a clear line between the struggling government and hopefully the opposition that is on the ascendancy. Jacinta Allen is saying that her voice, her treaty, which is leading towards a treaty, is not so much like the Commonwealth one, but is more about common sense than changing the Constitution. But, I think a lot of people are very suspicious about exactly what she's trying to do here, and I think this is a winner for the coalition.
Yeah, I don't think there's much common sense in it whatsoever, personally. Now, look, the Yoorrook Justice Commission's final reports on the impact of colonisation on Indigenous Victorians have been tabled in Parliament. This is all part of the state's truth-telling process, but apparently things were so divided behind the scenes that 3 of the 5 commissioners considered writing a dissenting report, Stephen, and yet they want a voice to Parliament.
You know, well, what do they say? We live in a post-truth world, don't we? Once upon a time, truth was about actuality. Now we have this concept of your truth, my truth, their truth. Everybody has a different truth. If this isn't evidence as to why this voice to Parliament shouldn't go ahead, if this five-member committee can't get their act together, what hope has a bigger body got? But it's just extraordinary that you've got 5 commissioners, 3 are dissenting, but the report's still going to be handed down anyway. How does that work?
Yeah, really good question. We're almost out of time. Susie, your thoughts really quickly?
Yeah, I think it was fascinating that we had to learn about this from the media and not from the actual report. Apparently there was one line in the report that even suggested that there were dissenting views. Apparently it's over their definition of history and some views about what's facts and what's fiction. But we shouldn't really have to read about this in the media.
No, definitely not. But again, it just comes down to they want to rush this voice through and nobody can agree on anything. And that's just the start of things to come. Stephen Cenatiempo, Susie O'Brien, thanks so much for joining me this evening.